Hi, Papercut here, doing a replay review of Forest Boy? Forest Lad. And this is exciting because I've been waiting for this to happen. He is basically a brand new player. At least that's what his account looks like. He's a level like 11 or 12. He's only played custom games. I think he's in one of these custom lobbies where it's just like people who are new to the game who want to practice playing. So it's really exciting because I've been wanting to actually watch and give advice to someone who's just starting the game, as that's like a direction I want to move into. So if you're interested in direct coaching, I do coaching sessions, hour-long coaching sessions, where we really work together back and forth on a Discord call. If you're interested in that, let me know. And as well, you can always check me out on Twitch if you want to see me play live. Anyway, so let's get into the replay review. And so this is an hour and 50-minute game, which is very common for people who are new because you're just trying to figure everything out and you're not really going directly into the action. So I'm not going to watch the whole hour and 50. I'm probably going to watch just the first 20 and kind of give you the tips and the things to work on, because what Forest Boy actually asked me to talk about is his military setup. But I think the really big thing if you win first is your start and your economy, and then we can talk a little bit about military. So one thing I would first suggest you do is you look up a build order for the Abbasids. A build order is like the first 5 to 10, like 8 minutes of exactly how to move your villagers around. It just makes it a lot cleaner and reduces the things you have to think about. And it's created by pros who min-max, which basically means they try to make sure it's as efficient as possible, so you're saving resources and time. Which will help you a lot. It looks like you have a general understanding what to do because you actually move somewhat effectively. But look up Beastie or Vladimir, any of the pros who do build order guides on YouTube. They'll be really helpful to you. But I'll kind of talk through what you should do. Your general goal, whenever you start off in the game, is to get to feudal immediately, age 2. To do that, you need gold and food. So your goal is generally to go onto food and then gold and age up and then start getting wood as you age up to start building production buildings and economic buildings and things like that. All the buildings you can build are split into those two. You either have military buildings or economy buildings. Military buildings are also called production buildings because you make units out of them. You produce units. So let's talk about what you should do first. You start with 3 sheep. So your goal when you start is the following. Take all 6 and put them on food immediately. Another option is you can take all 6, build a mill next to these berries. One thing about the Abbasids that you might not know, and it would be worthwhile for you to go look up your civ in the main menu. They have the ability to look at the civ and they describe the civ to you. Look at what the bonuses for the Abbasids are. Because the Abbasids actually get more food and gather faster from berries. So it's actually really worthwhile to go on berries. So one thing you can do is just take all 6 villagers, go over here, build a mill, build a house, and then go on berries. You only need to have 1 villager build the mill, 1 villager build the house, but the rest on berries. Then you should take your scout and send them towards the middle immediately. You want your scout to do 2 things in the beginning of the game. You want your scout to... Well, your scout's kind of doing 3 things at the beginning of the game. 1, it's trying to collect sheep. The more sheep you have, the safer food you have. Safe is like anything that's protected by this TC. You see this little dots? So your scout needs to go out there and get safe food. It needs to find where your other resources are, because knowing where your other resources are will help you know where you're going to go next and what your next steps are. Basically, if you know your resources, you need those resources. You're going to plan how can I protect them, how can I get villagers there, things like that. And lastly, your scout should be trying to find where the enemy is. Because if you know where your enemies are, you're able to react to what they are doing. So I'm going to turn down my music a little fast. I've had complaints about that in these videos. Okay. So I want you to watch your opening here. Since you move each villager individually, it actually makes it so it's a little bit inefficient and your villagers are idle. We don't want your villagers to stand still. So what you should do is when you send your scout out, send them to the middle, and then curve them back. If you watch my mini-map down here, you want to send it to the middle and then curve it over, back up, and back to your base. This gives you a solid area that you've looked at. You've gotten sheep. You should go over here and kind of do the same. Then once you get your rounds of sheep, then actually start going out and trying to find where are your enemies, where are their bases at, so you can plan accordingly. But yeah, I would put all 6 on food to start, and then rally up to 8 on food, and then rally 3 on gold. Then you go to wood, and you kind of go from there. and this will make your age up a lot faster if you do that. So you notice, I want to just point out here, you notice how you didn't go very far down, you kind of went over here, you only got 2 sheep, and if your villagers run out of sheep, it's going to be hard to keep collecting food. Another little tip, I don't know if you're playing on Xbox or computer, so the Xbox controls might be different. One thing you should always try to do is whenever you tell your villager to build something, make a follow-up command. So on keyboard, it's shit. You hold down shift and you click. I don't know what it would be on controller, if that's even possible. But you'd want to click them to the resource after. So they're not standing there after they're done building and not doing anything. So like if I had built this House of Wisdom, I would have clicked on the villager, clicked build House of Wisdom. I would have then held shift and clicked back on the sheep so that they know, okay, I go to the sheep after this. Another thing you should do is you should always rally your TC to a resource. So what you do this whole game is you rally your villager to stand here, which means there's a chance you might forget them, you might forget that they're there, and they're not doing anything. It's much better to just rally them to a resource. Even if it's a resource you have too much of, you can always move the villager later. They should never be sitting there doing nothing though. So either click on food, or click on wood, or click on gold, click on something so that your villagers are doing something when they leave the TC. Yes. Something else I noticed that's kind of small. I'm going to watch your camera view here. You spin your camera a lot. I don't know. Once again, I don't know if that's helpful to you. I would suggest you keep one perspective. It just really helps you orient yourself to what's happening on the map. If this works for you, it's fine. I would find it confusing of where I'm looking, where things are in relation to each other. So generally, I only spin the camera if I can't see, if there's a sheep behind my TC or there's a deer right here I can't see, then I'll move my camera. But I like to keep it in one spot. It helps me keep myself oriented on the map. So you go up the economic wing. Any of these wings are fine. Any of these, except maybe trade. But military and eco are generally the two you want to go up with. Placement of your resources. So you put your lumber camp here. I want you to think about this placement here. Your TC protects your villagers within this little dotted line. Early on, you want to try to keep your villagers as safe as possible until you have military to defend them. If an opponent's units walk into this circle, your TC can protect them. You putting your lumber camp here actually puts your units outside the protection of TC. It'd be better if you start gathering wood from your closest wood line, and then as you secure your base of units and are in a better position, then you can move your villagers out to farther away resources, would be my suggestion. So keep your villagers gathering resources within the starting circle and move out as you work. Make sure you're always making villagers. Always, always, always be making villagers. The people who have the most villagers, generally the ones who have the most resources, which means more units, which means they're more successful. So you're about to hit your age up, and here's where the first big branching path goes. What are you gonna do? RTS is kind of a goal-based game. You want to be able to complete. You want to win. Win is always the goal, and the winning often comes from a game plan. Now you might even have an idea what your game plan should be because you're gonna do the game, right? Are you gonna try to get units in feudal and push an opponent? Are you gonna try to age up and get better units than fight an opponent? Are you gonna try to boom, which is where you get another TC and get more villagers, so your eco is better and then fight? You have a lot of options. Each Civ generally though has ones that have obviously been built into what the Civ does best. So for example, Abbasid generally gets 2 TCs because 1, you can make them cheaper at the Fertile Crescent. So getting this upgrade here, since the TC is an economic building, economy and population building, it is cheaper, so your TCs are cheaper, and with this upgrade, Fresh Foodstuffs, it will make your villagers cheaper. So that's kind of the advantage of the Abbasid. The Abbasid's kind of built to boom to increase their economy. So my suggestion would be, if you're trying to find a game plan, my early suggestion would be you want a second TC, and then you go you then either build units and attack your opponent then, or you go to castle, make units, and attack your opponent then. The reason this would be successful for you is that you will have more villagers, so you'll get more economy, and then you will have more units and be able to beat them. Lastly, on the eco side, before I continue, I noticed when I kind of watched your game the first time before coming back and redoing this, you rarely get upgrades. I understand why. Upgrades can be kind of confusing. Generally, here's how, if you want to think about upgrades, you want to get economic upgrades if you have a lot of units gathering a resource. So if you have, I would say, more than 10 units gathering a resource, you want to get its upgrade. So for example, this double broadaxe here increases the rate for gathering wood. If you had 10 villagers with this upgrade, double broadaxe, versus another civilization that didn't have that upgrade, you would get more wood than them, which allows you to then get more buildings, make more units, things like that. So when you have enough villagers on a resource, you want to get that. And then every time you age up, there's another version of that upgrade. And you want to try to get those when you can afford them, because it does help boost your economy. So your villagers are about to run out of food here, and my suggestion is you should immediately go to the berries. You also have the berries back here. You're going to start making farms soon. You want to avoid making farms. Farms cost wood. Each farm costs wood, and that can slow your economy down. You want to stay on what we call pocket resources, which are these resources out on the map, as long as possible. Especially as the Abbasid, your berries are worth more. So if you put your villagers on berries, you'll actually get more food early on, and then you transition to farms later when you've run out of food on the map. But food on the map will always gather faster too. You gather super fast with berries. It will be more worthwhile to you than gathering with off farms early on. Your farms are really good. If you look at your upgrades, they're really good later on. But early on, you should do just pocket resources. Right now, the scout should be going down, trying to find where the enemies are. You generally know where your resources are around you. That's good. If you want to get a second TC into feudal, one thing you should do is once you hit feudal like you have, you should only have 4 on food. And then split your villagers evenly between wood and stone. So like even amounts on one stone. Until you have the resource to get a second TC. And then place that TC near a resource, like these berries. Or this wood line. Or these berries in this wood line. Something that you kind of want to think about your TC as a big tower that can protect resources while your units get them. Always make sure you're paying attention to this idle. You never want a villager sitting here idle. Even if it's gathering a resource, as I said, you have too much of. Always make sure your villager's doing something. On the theme of economic upgrades, wheelbarrow is a very, very good one. It makes your units faster, they can carry more. I would always get wheelbarrow first. As Abba said, make sure you get fresh foodstuffs. And then fertile crescent if you do the eco wing. Alright, so you start making units, and here's kind of the point of the goal point, right? Why are you making units? Because right now it just seems like you're making units just to make units. And that's because you don't know what's happening. Here's what I mean by that. You need to know what your opponent's doing. You're making units for either 2 reasons. 1, you want to go attack your opponent, or 2, you feel like you need to defend. If you went to your opponent and saw that they're making no units, that gives you 2 options. You can go attack them with your units and slow down their economy, or you can stop making units and just focus on your economy. But if you don't know what your opponent's doing, you're going to make decisions that are potentially wasteful. This army should be doing something. Either defending your base because your opponent is making units to attack you, or you are sitting those units to go attack your opponent and slow them down in some way. Right now, this is kind of doing a big nothing burger. Also, you want to make sure you upgrade your units whenever you age up. So these spearmen are early spearmen. You want to make sure you upgrade them when you go to the next age. My AC just kicked on, so sorry if that's loud. But the thought process is like, what do I want to do? What do I want to do as my goal? And what do I need to do because my opponent is doing something? Well, if you don't know what your opponents are doing, you're kind of taking a guess. So your goal right now should be just try to scout in your opponents that are nearest to you. So whichever opponent is here, whichever one is here, you need to figure out what are they doing and what ways do you need to react. So macro, economy. So macro is how you set up your economy for success, which is why you need a goal. If your goal is that you want to fight in feudal, you want to put your villagers on resources that help you do that. Fighting in feudal means you generally need wood and food, because all feudal units cost wood and food. And you need wood to build more buildings. You don't need very much gold, because gold is used to age up or get upgrades. So 2 or 3 on gold is enough to get upgrades until you want to go to castle. But if you don't really have a goal, you just kind of split your villagers around. Here's what you should do. Based on what you want to do, and you should try things. Try fighting in feudal. Try going to castle and then fighting. Try these different things and see what you like best. But whatever you do, ask yourself, where do my villagers need to be? You should regularly check your resources and go, are my resources set up in a way that's helping me be successful? If not, make sure you rally units to that resource or move villagers off a resource onto one that you need more of. So for example, looking at 8, 12, 3, you will probably start needing more food villagers to make more units. Or, even if you want to age up, to keep making villagers make units, you need more on food. So this should be rallied to berries and making more food. Lastly, what's going to happen a lot on lumber especially, as your units chop, they get farther and farther away. That means every time they have to drop off, they have to walk really far, which wastes time and means you're losing resources. One common thing you'll see players do is whenever they go deep into a wood line, they'll keep building more lumber camps so that their villagers walk less, which actually gives you more resources. So one thing you asked about is unit comp. So there's kind of two ways to think about unit comp. One, do you have units that are really, really good and you want to run them no matter what? And two, what units will best counter your opponent's units? Now, when you're playing a free-for-all like this, it's kind of hard because you could be countering one opponent, but a different opponent will counter your comp. So you generally want to run a comp that is pretty overall sound. And a 1v1, it's pretty simple. You try to run a comp and then you see what your opponent's doing, you counter your opponent. In this free-for-all, you kind of just need a generally good comp. My suggestion for you is that you go a comp that has a front line, so melee units, some archery units, and then some siege. How should that be split? My suggestion for you as Abbasid, since you have really, really good spears, you do a spearman front, then you go archers and crossbowmen, especially because your archers are really, really, really good. So you getting a lot of archers is really effective. So do a huge mass of archers and some crossbows, and then you get mangonels for siege. Your spearmen protect your front line. Your spearmen protect your archers, and they protect your mangonels. Your archers will tear through any units to try to attack your spears, and then your mangonels will tear through any groups of large amount of units. So you're facing an opponent who has all they do is they do men-at-arms. Well, having 3 mangonels will really help break up that huge unit mass. So that's kind of a comp that covers all of its bases. Spears will protect the front and kill any horsemen or cavalry. Archers, which in mass enough will beat almost anything because of your upgrades, if you get the military school, which I suggest you get in Castle. And then mangonels to cover that. And then you might need to get springles to protect your mangonels, because springles destroy other siege. It's the rock, paper, scissors of the game. What's great about Abbasids is that when you hit Castle, you can make these straight up. You don't even need a siege workshop. You can make these with your units. Sorry. Now, you do have other units. You have like camels that are really good as well, and gulams, and those comps work as well. But you want to try to run a comp and then react if you're noticing your comp isn't being very successful. If you end up playing against an opponent that is like all cavalry, like all knights or all horsemen, going camels is a really good option. So I want to see what happens here. And at this point, I kind of hit everything I want to cover. I want you to notice how you doing these farms is really slowing you down, because you have to keep using your wood to build more farms and you're not getting a lot of food. Gather these food resources. Gather these food resources. They're very, very helpful to you. Look how far your villagers have to walk to drop off a resource. And lastly, think about how you being passive is helping your opponents. You have an army here. Let's look at the map. You have an opponent who's sitting here. He's also building an army, but he has resources that are open. And actually that leads to, how do I attack? If I want to go attack an opponent, how do I attack an opponent? Well, first you need to scout. Scouting will be really helpful to you because you don't know where to attack an opponent. But let's say you've scouted your first opponent. You've scouted red over here. Your goal would be is to rotate through any resource he needs. He will need resources. You want to check gold. Check food resources. He's doing what you're doing, which I think you guys learned from playing the campaign, which is just build farms. One, you want to put your farms behind your base, which are protected more by the TC. Never put farms in front of your base. That's really easy for an opponent to raid. You want to put it back here. Second, imagine you taking your military and just walked around his base. You could kill these villagers. You could kill these villagers. Keep rotating around back. You could kill these villagers. The point I'm making is you can do a lot of damage to your opponent without killing him, but weakening him, which gives you an advantage, which you can then play upon as your eco becomes better. Really, a lot of the goals of early game is just to hurt your opponent's villager count. Can you get rid of his villagers so your economy is better? Another thing you should do is you're lucky that none of your opponents are really sending units to you early on. I watched the hour of the game on speed, on like 8 speed, but no one sent units at you. But I want you to think about if opponent did send units at you. What if horsemen had appeared here? You would have lost villagers. There's nothing you can do. What if knights had been here? Nothing you could do. One thing you should do, especially as you get all this extra wood, is build walls. Build walls that protect your base. If you wall here, that's one area. Wall here, that's another. Wall here to here, that's another. Protect yourself so your opponent just can't walk into your base. But yeah, you should be trying to use these units, especially when you're playing these starting games, these practice games. You know your opponents are pretty passive like you. So go take risks. Go take chances. You kind of try to here, and then you get scared and walk away. I think your army's better than his right now. But you really do need to make sure you're upgrading your units as you age up. Upgrade your units. Second, as you improve your eco, you get more villagers and you're gathering more resources. It's important to build more production. You're noticing that you could build way more gulags. You have the resources to build them, but you can't because you don't have enough production buildings. So make sure as you get more resources, you're building more production buildings, which allow you to make more military at the same time, which will allow you to have a bigger military than your opponent. One thing I do is I put all of my, once again, I don't know if you're on a keyboard or controller, but I put all of my production on control 3. And then whenever I click 3, I can get all my production at the same time. I can click tab to tab through my different production buildings, and I can rally them together. So that allows me to, one, build the military much faster based on the resources I have. Two, always be making villagers. Always making villagers. I keep my TCs on the side of my mouse. I have a side mouse button. And I'm always cycling back to my TCs to make sure I'm making villagers. And of course, get your upgrades as you can afford them. If you want gold units, for example, you'll need more on gold. Maybe you want to do knights, which costs 100 gold. You need more on gold. But you notice that you have all these extra resources, you're not spending them. Unless you want to age up, you want to be spending your resources on military. Excuse me. And on these free-for-alls, it's actually more effective to go attack an opponent early so you're not getting pinched. Right now, orange is losing because orange is getting pushed by pink, who built a bunch of horsemen and spearmen, just walked in and destroyed his base. The last thing I want to talk about is base building. If you want to get things up quickly, use multiple villagers, just big things like TCs. You want to do multiple villagers. Second, get lots of stone in castle and build keeps. Put keeps where there are good resources. So, for example, you have gold here that is really far away from your base. You might want to protect. Put a keep here, and then you can mine that gold safely while your keep's protecting that. You see this berry bush, these berry bushes here. Put a keep here. You can get those berries. Use keeps to secure good resources that your villagers can gather while being protected by a keep, because you can't have your military everywhere. Okay. And lastly, something to notice, when you're making buildings, if for some reason your buildings are like empty outlines, that means you told the villager to do it, but then you might have moved that villager. That means you just need to send a villager over and go build that building. But you see your villagers here, they are just not doing anything. It's a waste of resources. They could be gathering something. So right now you're doing what I call the hodgepodge. You're building a little bit of everything. If you mass up anything in big enough numbers, you'll win. But generally you want a comp that works together. You don't know what your opponent's ready. So that's why I said spears, archers, mangonels, maybe a few crossbows, and you'll probably be okay. Or if you have enough gold, do gulams, archers, and mangonels. That works as well. Your gulams are very good. Make sure you get a blacksmith early and get these upgrades. These upgrades are very, very important. Especially, I'd say the most important military upgrade is Iron Undermesh. Getting ranged armor is super helpful to your units, both if they're facing against ranged units and if they go under TC fire. They can take more hits from a TC with that Iron Undermesh. So let's watch this example of a combat here and what you should try to do when you're in combat. One, your units can make rams. That's the power of the Abbasids. They don't need to research anything to make rams. So you should you have the wood to do it, make some battering rams. What you need to do is gather a group of infantry, horses can't do this, or camels, and just build like 2 to 3 rams here, and then a move or attack move your rams in. So you walk in, you see this, you don't see any villagers, you see this army, and look at this army's made up of spears, which your spears counter. You have archers and crossbows, which counter his spears, and then only a few archers. So you're going to win this fight. Very nice. What do you do next? You see villagers gathering here. You should now raid into his base and start killing his villagers. Which you start doing. Awesome. That's less eco he's getting. Use all your villagers, though, and you see more. Getting him off food is really, really good. You need food to do almost anything. So you should be walking through and killing his villagers, and then potentially even killing his farms. If you had a couple rams, though, your rams could be doing that too. Your rams will destroy farms. They will destroy these mills. They could attack the town center. You come over and see he's making units, and you notice he has a lot of units. At this point, I probably would have just turned and walked away. It is okay to not take a fight if you don't think you can win it, and wait till you get more units. While you're fighting, look how many units you still have back here. Whenever you start fighting, rally your buildings forward so your units can come and fight together. If your units were up here, they would win this fight. But whenever you're fighting, you should ask yourself, what's my opponent running? Is my comp working against this? Elephants, well, you need spears, you have those. Spearmen, you beat them with archers. Even his men-at-arms, you have a few crossbows, and enough archers will still beat men-at-arms in large amounts. So that's going good. As I said, your comp is less important. Do you have the eco, and are you making units? Look how many resources you have. You could be making quadruple the amount of units you're making right now. And if your units were upgraded to their elite levels, they'd be even better. Once you get to Imperial, a Bombard's really good at destroying buildings, and a Culverin's really good at destroying other siege. So if your opponent has a lot of Magnels, building a Culverin will destroy those Magnels really well. I'm not worried about his micros much. What I'm more worried about is, are you making enough units to win a fight? Cool. That's all I got for you today. I think there's some good groundwork for you to work on. 1, watch a build order. Make sure you understand how you want to open up. 2, have a goal once you hit feudal. What's your game plan that you're going to play a few games in a row and try and see how it works? Are you going to get a second TC? There's guides that show you to do that. Are you going to make units and go try to fight an opponent? Aggressiveness is really good. Often your opponents don't know how to respond to that. If you're an aggressive, go attack their resources. Make sure they can't get anything. If they can't get any resources, they die. Do you want to go castle? Depending on your goal, you split your villagers based on that goal, and then see if it works, and try to win the game. Lastly, use your pocket resources. Make sure you're gathering the resources around your base. Go to farms when you run out of food. Make sure you're moving lumber camps close to your wood lines, and gathering close to your TC and working out as you have military. Lastly, get your economic upgrades and your military upgrades, which will really help you. These upgrades are huge. Your military upgrades are really important. Your eco upgrades are super important. And never stop making villagers. You should have probably, at this point, almost 70 villagers, 80 villagers. And make sure you rally your villagers to economic resources. So they're gathering, always gathering, and getting new resources to use. Work on those fundamentals, and you should start getting better, and then we can talk about the next things to work on. But those are like the basic level things you should start when getting better at the game. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. And let me know if you're ever interested in a coaching session. Good luck on your games.